So recently I took on the project of building a glass blowing studio. And on my last video, I rebuilt a very important piece of equipment that I needed. So now we're at the point where we have to find a place to set this up. And so in today's video, we're gonna build an enclosure that will hold that equipment and everything else that we need for our studio. We have a lot of open room here, but I'm not gonna put it inside here. Instead, we're going to extend this whole wall outward like this. The first thing we have to do to build this extension is get rid of this central post right here. So what we have to do is figure out a way to build a brace that connects all three beams together and holds up this central beam, allowing us to get rid of this. We're going to start by taking a 2x12, cutting it down, and then installing it across those three beams. All right, the 2x12 is up. Now we're gonna install this giant angle iron. See, it's super dirty and rusty, so I'm gonna remove the rust, clean the dirt, and then repaint it really quick. Then we'll install it under the 2x12. Starting with all the dust, we're gonna sweep it off with a broom. After that, we're gonna cut off those end caps with an angle grinder. With the end caps removed, we're now going to drill 4 holes in 3 different spots on the angle iron. Then we're gonna trim down one of the sides just to make it easier to fit against the wood. All right, I got the steel all clean. I drilled some holes for the lag bolts. I also cut out a little notch on both sides. That way it fits better on the beam. Metal is in really good shape. There's hardly any rust, and the paint is still almost completely intact. Because of that, we're not gonna repaint it. We're just gonna go ahead and install it. With a little bit of help, I got the angle iron set in place. Then after we screwed in all the lag bolts, we were able to remove the central post. All right, the central post is gone. We have one continuous support. Wood and the steel is holding up that middle beam really well, and everything is still very strong. Now we're gonna build the metal frame for the enclosure, but before we do that, we have to clean up all this stuff here. I wanna eventually completely clean this side of the studio, but for now, all I need is a small area to be cleaned. The build area is nice and clean. Now we have to move on to building the frame for the enclosure. I'm gonna be using this steel square tubing for the frame. Now the reason I chose steel over wood for the framing is because this area is going to get really hot and I didn't want to risk the wood getting burned. Right now I'm cutting up the top part of the frame. Once I have all the sizes cut, we're then going to weld them together. The top part of the frame is done. Now we got to weld it up to the steel there. This time around I didn't have any help, so I had to figure out how to lift this frame up by myself. This part was a little bit tricky since the thing was so big and hard to handle. I tried putting it on this ladder and eventually I got it to where I could sit it on top of these clamps. Then I used a wooden post to wedge it in place. This gave me the time to measure and cut the steel legs, and then I switched out the wood for the steel and then welded everything together. After the assembly, we can paint it with this protective enamel paint to prevent any rust. Unfortunately, at this point, I made a little bit of a mistake. I accidentally had my camera set to slow motion, so everything was very slow and it didn't record any audio. This problem occurred for a pretty long duration of time. I didn't even notice, but unfortunately, sometimes that happens. Nonetheless, right now what we're doing is building the frame for the platform that the equipment is going to sit on. The thing we're setting on this is like 500 pounds, so we really have to make sure it's strong. After the painting, just like on the metal frame, we're going to take it and install it to the deck. And for the flooring part of it, we're going to be using 2 layers of plywood on top. Not only that, but to make it even stronger and fireproof, we're going to add a layer of cement board on top. It's hard to see on camera, but all the flooring that you see here is made of plastic, which is really bad for a glass blowing studio. Every once in a while, a piece will break, or maybe you drop molten glass on the ground, and if you have plastic flooring, it's gonna melt and cause toxic fumes and just ruin the floor. So, just like before, we're gonna install cement board on the entire floor. We are now done installing the flooring. We no longer have to worry about hot glass landing on the ground and damaging it. I also added some sheet metal along the edge to protect the wooden frame. Now we're gonna take this equipment here and place it on the platform. Like I said earlier, this thing is about 500 pounds, so it's really hard to move. I tried using a forklift to place it on the platform, but it was too tall to get under the frame, so we had to change our approach a little bit. Instead of trying to forklift it onto the platform, I placed it down on the deck and then I used a pallet jack to move it in place. This is pretty cool to see. Everything in here is starting to come together. Now we have to focus on building the walls and the roof for this section of the studio. Off camera, I went and bought all this sheet metal here. We're gonna use this as the siding and for the roof. We'll start by installing the sheet metal on the top. After getting the sheet metal in place, we're now going to screw it down using these specialty screws. Now we're gonna work on the sides. For the walls, since we couldn't use an entire sheet, we had to trim it down to the size that we needed. Just like before, after the cutting is done, we can just screw it in place. The walls and the roof are up. It's looking good. I left the gaps right there. That way the heat and the exhaust from this has a place to escape. But I still want this section fully enclosed. That way no birds, bats, or any debris can get in. So we're gonna use this corrugated steel to cover the gaps. This way we can still allow the heat and the exhaust to escape, but it'll fully enclose the area. In hindsight, I really should have wore gloves. I cut my hand like maybe 4 or 5 times handling this stuff. And the wire mesh is installed. I also added the grill on the bottom. That way when it rains, water can drain underneath the deck and go to the main drain on the other side. It took all the time to install the wire mesh so nothing gets in, yet we have a giant opening here on this wall. Now we're gonna focus on building a giant barn door that's gonna cover this entire wall. A friend and fellow artist, Nick McGuire, gave me all this track here that I can use to build the sliding door. He also gave me the hardware for the door, so we're gonna use this. I went back to the same metal supplier to get the sheet metal, and they only had this brown stuff, so we're gonna have to repaint it. I also bought some more square tubing. We're gonna start by building the frame of the door using those square tubes. The frame of the door is done, and you can see it's pretty big. I added a handle on it to make it easy to open and close. I added the wheels to allow it to slide. Now we're gonna paint the entire frame, and then we're going to attach the sheet metal. We're gonna be using the same enamel paint that we used on all the other parts, that way everything matches. A friend of mine saw me working on this project and decided to come by to help. I don't like the brown color here, but that was the only color they had in stock. So we're gonna paint it to match this gray color here. Eventually I wanna paint a mural on the entire thing, but for now we're just gonna leave it one color. Since we have so much surface area to cover, I opted out of spray paint since it would have made it way more expensive. With the help of my friend, we managed to paint all the side panels and the door. Before we install the sliding door, we're going to put a wall from here to about 10 feet in. We'll start by putting in a stud. This is going to give us something to screw to. And after that, we can install the metal panels. Alrighty, the wall is up. I trimmed down the top metal just a little bit. And finally, all we have left to do is to install this door. Before putting up the track, I had to add a spacer so it wouldn't hit the wall that we just installed. And after the spacer, we can add the track. Last but not least, we can slide the door into the track, and now this project's complete. The enclosure is finally done. Now we still have a lot more that we need to do to make this a fully functioning glass blowing studio. So of course, if you want to keep up with this project and everything else that we do here at the studio, then be sure to follow, and thanks for your time.